let's dive in. We were talking about diversity. Now, I know you from another HBCU, and so I know that you are very committed to your work and you're a phenomenal educator. You are now where's Claflin in?
Claflin University is the oldest HBCU in South Carolina.
Uh-huh.
What was interesting is that the very first time I've ever heard about Orangeburg, when I was in the airport of Salvador Bahia, I was with 12 Morehouse students. We had just finished a study abroad program in Salvador Bahia, 3 weeks. I was just so grateful that everybody came back in one piece and they were safe. And I met the provost and the president of Claflin University in that little waiting room. And so that was the first time I ever heard about Claflin University, because I was like, Orangeburg, South Carolina, I've never heard of it. Okay, well, it's nice to meet you guys. And then look where we are now. So that's really kind of how I got to Claflin, really, was because of that meeting, that encounter that I had with the president and the provost. And I was actually doing what they would like to see happen at Claflin, is to increase the opportunities for our students at Claflin and really across HBCUs, the opportunity to travel abroad and to have that transformative experience, and also to be able to be just more competitive. I mean, like you were talking about before, we're living in a more diverse global society. And if our students, in of higher learning education, if we do not prepare them to live, work, and play in a globalized, diverse society, we might encounter some of the issues that we're having now, right, across the board when it comes to communication and people not getting along and not being able to work together.
Well, I want to just say that I just had a interview with Dr. Sinclair Gray III about networking, becoming an entrepreneur and networking. So I love your story about how you were able to transition to your next job by simply being yourself and networking. So that's awesome. So tell me about what you're bringing to Claflin now, because you were just honored just a little while ago.
Yeah, it was, I think, Women's Month, right, in March, and they actually were celebrating a lot of different women across Claflin campus that has, been able to provide their influence and their impact. And it was an honor to be able to have that, just because I've been there such a short period of time. But I think what I believe that I am bringing to Claflin, a lot of people, I'm Brazilian American, so I was born in the United States in upstate New York. When I taught at Spelman College, they were very quick to tell me, D'Souza, that New York and upstate New York are two different things. If you're not from the the 5 boroughs of New York, you're not from New York. So I'm from upstate New York.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I was born in upstate New York, and I grew up in the South, but both my parents are Brazilian. And so there was always this dichotomy at home, this dynamics that when I was younger, sometimes I really didn't understand, what was going on. Some people reacted to me, certain people saying certain things. Being in Auburn University, or Auburn is a small southern town in Alabama. And then I speak different languages. So, and then I'm also a PhD. I'm a doctor. And so there's not a lot of women that look like me or have my experience on Claflin's campus. And so just my presence have already provided diversity that I have not seen yet. A woman that can be intelligent and smart, who can travel the world, who can speak across different departments, different kind of people. And so it's still to this day surprises me when I come into an atmosphere. I'll give you an example. When I was in Cuba, I was traveling with an HBCU, and we were sitting at a table with adults and faculty and staff, and they really wanted me to identify with a color. I was like, do you identify with your Black? Are you white? And the thing I feel like that people, and people have said it to me, and I think this is probably what's going on. There's like, you know what? You act like a sister. You must be a sister. But I have been able to, what's the best word to say? I've been able to go into different communities, and I don't feel like it's been a hard effort. I can be in a room with a bunch of people from South Carolina that, are from the deep South, who maybe represent what our president looked like, a white male, and be okay in that. I can be in, an environment of HBCU, and it's mostly African Americans, and I'm okay. And then I can be, in an international setting with people from different backgrounds, and I feel okay. So I've been blessed to feel like I can go through these different circles, and people want to accept me, but at the same time, they still want to put me in a box. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
Better to put me in a box because they understand how to deal with me. But when I had that conversation with that group, and they just want to put me in a box, and I'm like, isn't that the purpose of what we're doing? Is trying not to be in a box. Exactly. And so they just wanted me. It's like, we can identify you. You're one of us. Mm-hmm. And so when they say that, it's kind of like, okay, that means you have to identify with a color. And so I don't identify myself with a color. I identify with my traditions, where my culture, and so it's hard for some people, but I think I bring all that to the table when I'm at Claflin.
Well, it's interesting, especially speaking from a professional arena, and an educational system that's supposed to, quote, get it right. And we still struggle. We still struggle with that. Tell me what are your frustrations as a professional woman in a professional arena? What is your frustration, and how do we bridge what's missing in really providing a true comprehensive diversity program? If that's really what we're trying to do.
Yes, that is. One of my main frustrations, and I think I feel it the most in this current, maybe I think it's build up to this moment, or I'm in a space that I truly recognize it. My frustration is I would like to move through different departments that I work with minimal resistance. Now, what is that minimal resistance? So those resistance come in different forms. It could be personal. We don't have any idea. So there might be a woman that is in a situation that maybe doesn't have the same credentials that I do, and someone maybe sees me as a threat because I'm on the other side, right. Which is not the case at all. I feel all of us, bring something to the table, and so it hasn't been uncommon for women and I to connect after we meet. Initially, maybe not, until they get to know me and realize that I'm a team player. How can I help you? And how can you help me? How are we both on the same mission? And so the resistance come in different forms. The institution where I'm at right now is an institution on values and traditions. And some change is hard when it comes to value and traditions. And I do believe that the administration has this vision that they do have to be more diverse. They have to work with people from different countries that speak different languages, that practice different religion. But it's hard to do change. And then also too, I'm not sure if the environment that we're in, I feel like we're in the deep, deep South. Mm-hmm. As much as Atlanta is a big city, Atlanta still had some of the racial issues that's in the communities, and maybe it's from the history. And you can see it in different ways. And so I'm hiring other people that kind of think like me. I think there is an effort to try to have people that look more like the people they're trying to recruit. And that can be challenging, especially when you have people that don't really want to change. And so I think that's one of the things. However, you get to a situation where you want to make the biggest impact that you can. And one of the things that I tell some of my colleagues, that if I succeed at Claflin University, that means I have succeeded in helping more students receive an experience overseas that they never would have gotten before. And so that's the thing that sometimes frustrates me, is that we're all on the same team. You know, if I succeed, we all succeed here. And so is it because you don't want to see me succeed? Or is it, is this maybe, lip service? Maybe this is not really what we're trying to do. And so you have to find out where that is. And then, if that's the position where you can grow in and make the most difference, and then that's the season that I'm in right now.
I want to lead into something that you just said, to come into a culture that's already fixed. The question is, are we really serving so that everyone feels a part of the existing culture?
Yes. And I feel like some places do it better than others, but I feel like some of the issues and challenges are very similar across the board. You have international students that come in and it's a culture shock.
Yes, absolutely.
They're away from family and friends and network. All these things come into play. However, if you have things in place or processes in place that do not necessarily serve the domestic students or necessarily serve the current population that we have now, then we are going to continue to have the same roadblocks or issues. A lot of these international students, they need service, this customized, for a lack of a better word, customer service, because their needs are differently, and we want them to flourish. We want to maximize their learning experience. We want them to be at a place where they become their better self here, because some people realize that, and then they're champion for the cause. They're kind of like on their own when they do that. And then you have people that kind of join in. And so what I realize at Claflin, where I'm at right now, the ones who have somewhat carrying that flag by themselves, now they feel like they have somebody with them that will be able to advocate for them in the sense of more service. And when it comes to international activity, let's say international scholars, what happens is team effort. And so sometimes we get into these silo mentalities. So a combination of, this is what we do here, and I don't really want to give away any of my power, or I don't really want to open up this space, to be able to collaborate. And they might not be obvious about it.
That's where I was leading to. Exactly.
It might not be obvious about it. In theory, we're trying to help and we're trying to collaborate with all the departments. For me, though, as a professional and me as a person, I have to take that a step further. Like, what's really going on? Is it a personal thing? Is it, because we have so many things that affect our professional arena that sometimes we don't talk about, we don't acknowledge. And the more that you're in a culture environment, you start seeing that, gosh, maybe these roadblocks are out of their control because it's layers of processes that don't work. Maybe they're inefficient. That at the end of the day, you need resources in order for you to provide these services across the board. And so you might have human capital, human resources. And also you have to have a space of recognition and highlighting awards. People want to be recognized. People want to be rewarded. Absolutely. And so I feel like if there's this culture of, you are praised for, taking initiative, taking a stand, working with others. And so sometimes that might not necessarily be the end result if you don't stay in your lane, if you don't try to collaborate. And then you have personal things that happen. And so I truly believe that in order for you to succeed professionally, there's some personal things that still have that have to take place, and for me, one of the things that I like to do is try to see what other people are doing, books that are out there, workshops that are out there, that continually trying to improve myself, because I'm just in a position where I can affect change. There's students who are watching me. There's faculty who are watching me. And I realize that after students say, Dr. Souza, we heard that you were here on campus. We heard you're about your stuff. You communicate with your students. You respond in a timely manner. You make an effort. We feel like you care, that you really are trying to make it. And so when you hear those things, those are the things that maybe they're not getting across the board. If I'm providing that, then that means this is not the getting across the board. Right. And so this is the ongoing process in trying to get better. Hopefully my position, so my office my position was created to centralize really all the international activity there. Because sometimes it helps in certain university systems and how they work and how it's governed, to create something that's going to go with the flow of things. And one of the things you realize there, that you have to centralize all their efforts, because they want to know who's in charge. Yeah. Who's in charge of that? Who's supposed to do that? No, that's her job. That's his job. And so this is one step in kind of helping centralizing, because there's a lot of international activity that's going on. And so my office does a couple of things. The main thing is to promote and advocate for international experiences, and that's across the board. But also, too, the institution is trying to create a culture that is more diverse and inclusive. And so it goes along with the institution's mission. It goes along with my office, and then actually goes along, personally, because I want to be in an environment that's diverse and inclusive. It works better for me that way. I don't work very well in a society that is in an ecosystem that doesn't work that way.
And, I wonder if, now I hear what your process is in order to become comfortable and accepted in a culture, in a different culture. And I imagine that's the same for international students as well. They're looking for resources and to give them the inside view of what to expect in the culture. That's great. My question, especially since we have a compact environment on campus, do you find that campuses are ready for diversity? So in other words, are we open enough to accept more international students and more diversity? I know we say it, lip service, but I just wonder, and the reason why I say that is so I can give you perspective from the outside looking in. I was at Spelman as well. And so the only time that I heard anything about diversity was a party, a course, but I'm not sure, maybe I missed something. I'm not sure that there was a opportunity for all faculty and staff to sit down and talk about what diversity is, what to expect, what it's like to be an international student, Mm-hmm. What do you think?
There's some, I agree with some of that. And one of the things that I think I'm coming to find, my voice, my professional voice, that hopefully is in tune with my personal voice of, when do you say something, when do you not say something? Because, you have an opportunity to either voice it or exit the situation, right? You voice you voice, maybe some of the things that you see or don't see, or you exit the situation. And so we were always in a situation where, what do we do here? And in the current position that I'm in, and the current culture that I'm in, it's not that they're not open to it. I don't think they don't want to. It's a lot of work when you have to to sit across somebody and listen to their where they come from, how they do things, to know not to offer cold water to certain people from different cultures as opposed to warm water. You only know that if you had a chance to talk with them, to sit with them. So I think that it takes time. It takes, you have to acknowledge. And so if you're not willing to acknowledge different things about yourself, then it's going to be hard for you to open and acknowledge about
anyone that's different from you.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And so, I think you have two waves going on. You have the wave of, yes, it's time. We want this. We see this, faculty, my friends from Nepal, my, students from Jamaica, my, the cook is from, Brazil. And so I have students that have never left South Carolina, that they haven't been to Columbia, the capital of South Carolina. And so we have still faculty and staff that are in that same situation. So the unknown is scary. It's not, it's work too. It's just taking time. It's patience, valuing just a human, their situation. And sometimes you have to be out of yourself in order to do that. And sometimes we're just so stuck in ourselves, that we can't do that. And so I feel like you have to begin the conversation and then you start moving in that direction. And some people are just not going to want to accept it. You're going to always have this resistance, but you keep moving into the atmosphere where you're going to either, they have to exit the situation or they'll voice it. But we're in a situation right now. Well, now that I say it, we're in a globalized situation, but now we have a leader that is, leading our country that might not have those same views. And so now we're going to empower some of those people who, thinking that, being more homogeneous, not mixing races, not opening up opportunities to work and collaborate with people from different cultures and backgrounds. I feel like it's going to be more challenging where we are right now.
And that's one reason why I wanted to talk with you, because I do notice that there are plenty of programs in corporate America, small business, across college campuses where they're recognizing diversity. But I see it as just a label, as a program just to say that we honor diversity, but I don't see the work that it really takes to merge and really get to understand different cultures in that environment, be it, a company or a college campus. I think there needs to be more done other than having a program and someone ahead of the program, but actually like a town hall, bringing some conversation to the entire body to get to, even if you can't travel abroad, it's a wonderful experience to get firsthand experience from those who are from other parts of the world. So those of you who are listening and watching, if you know of a company or an institution that has gotten it right and that are really, I know it's a huge effort, but someone who understands that it takes more than just having a program, that you actually need everybody, the collective, involved in getting to know each other and acceptance. Mm-hmm. And I think that once we get that right in our prospective small sectors, we can spill out into the world and make a real difference. So that's just my little observation, but hopefully there are tons of people, tons of examples that are getting it right. And if you're viewing, please call me and let me know. I would love to interview you to find out, to provide some other ideas for those programs that may be struggling in different areas. You mentioned professional women and how difficult it is for one professional woman to another to accept each other and actually, extend an olive branch and collaborate. And why is there, or have you experienced, I know I have in my profession, but have you experienced barriers that won't allow that collaboration to happen, such as jealousy or just downright not wanting to get to know you for for educational reasons, for curvy reasons, for whatever reason. But it's interesting that you find this in the professional world. Who knew? So how do I explain this to my 18-year-old who has just finished high school and has gone through similar things with her peers? And, it actually translates over to our professional world as well. So how do we capture this sisterhood? What do you think?
Ooh, it's an interesting question. It's a question that I have I've struggled with, because and it was brought to my attention. My brother is always really good when I wanted to voice frustrations, and I remember having a conversation with him, and this could have been, I was in my house for 10 years, so it has to be at least 7 years ago. And I remember telling him a story of a frustration, and one of the frustration was not seeing another woman help another woman or take the opportunity to help another woman in that situation. And I just remember voicing that, and he's just like, Patricia, what usually is your biggest frustration is probably going to be one of your biggest passions, meaning what you are part of what you're called to do, right? Whatever frustrates you the most, whatever is like the biggest injustice that just like comes over and over and over again. Right now I've been fortunate. When I was younger, I seeked out older women to mentor or to spend time with or to whatever. And it was hard to do that. I remember actually asking somebody, and I was probably in like 21, 22, and there's just things about her that I just admire and just all. And I remember asking her, and she was like, I'm not ready for that. That's what she said. I'm not ready for that. I'm not at a position where to be able to be that person that you needed. When I was getting my dissertation, I wanted to have a committee that had some women on it. I couldn't find any women for a combination of different reasons. Because number one, when you're getting your PhD, the best dissertation is a done dissertation. So I wanted to find a combination of an experience from women in the field, as well as to get a team that's going to help me finish. And what ended up happening, I had 4 males, a Cuban guy, two Caucasian guys, or 2 guys that might identify themselves as white, and then three. So 3. So I searched out for it, could not find it. And like I've told you before, what happens initially when I meet people, they don't know how to take me. They don't know what box to put me in. They, if they already have a stereotype, if they already have some kind of image, and I have broken that image, and somehow then it just frustrates them. And it happens with women as well. And it's not until they get to know me. However, then you got some women who just don't take the chance to get to know me for whatever reason. And I think some of those barriers has to be, it's jealousy, but at the same time, it's competition. I don't want to see her succeed. I want to be able to get to the top. I want this power to be able to, to be able to have this control, to feel important, to have some identity. And so I feel like it's a personal thing. It's your personal growth in it, because one of my foundations is my identity in Christ. And so with that being said, everything comes back to, how I am portraying myself. And I want to be the best woman that I can be, to serve my purpose, to follow my passions. And when you're in that position, you might have this jealousy. You might have this competition. I love the expression that girls compete and women empower. The women that are in my life are the women that have seen me for who I am, what I'm trying to do, and then we're trying to uplift each other. But that didn't happen until a couple of years ago, you know, and I can name some women that, you know, have been there for me that I can count on. That, you know, it's interesting. I might have this relationship with one, and then I would tell her, I was like, oh, you're friends with so-and-so? I was like, she won't even speak to me. Like, I have tried to talk to her. I've reached out to her. And so for me to be able to have to be in a situation, in a relationship, a professional or personal relationship with someone, and then not to have that same one with somebody that's, you know, in that circle,
Right.
you know, what is that? You know what I'm saying? What's going on there? But what I realize that I can't worry about that. I need to work with the people that want to work with me, that, you know, see some value, that I see value in, and realize that, you know, yeah, there's some people that might, you know, come for me, that might try to sabotage what I do, that doesn't want to see me succeed. But my position, I have a foundation where, you know, what's forming, God can't take away from me. You know, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. So I have that foundation that helps me. I don't know how it works for other people.
And a lot of people don't realize that we are struggling among ourselves to even embrace that sisterhood. So the conversation has to be had so that we can all check ourselves and become better. And in your defense, I've experienced the same thing in broadcasting, the same thing in the fitness world. It's, you know, kind of arm's length. And it's unfortunate. So for those of you who are, you know, working in an environment where you've noticed that you have a barrier, can't put a label on it. That's what's interesting about this conversation. We don't know the source. We just know that you feel the tension just like a brick wall. Can't get through it. And it doesn't matter how enthusiastic you are about a project. When you bring it to another woman of any nationality, oftentimes, if you have one up on her, be it education, maybe you're married, maybe you're single, maybe you're brown, maybe you're white, maybe you're, I don't know. But it's something about the estrogen meeting the estrogen that blocks us. And we really need to become aware of it so that we can do better, because we've got great work to do in this world. And it's unfortunate that we're holding each other back or sabotaging each other. I've had that happen on several occasions in different departments that I've worked in, which was, yeah, boy, that floored me.
I think when it happens, it's shocking at first. You're just like, wait a minute, and then you know, you get to then you get angry, right? You get to a spot of like, wait a minute, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't even in that space.
Yes.
And then, you know, depending, you know, what kind of person you are, which way you go with that information or that experience. But yes, like you said, it's disheartening, it's disappointing, and sometimes it just makes you feel like being alone. You know, you just feel alone out there.
And oftentimes you are. Oftentimes, most professional women stay to themselves, and and you do feel alone.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
It doesn't have to be that way. So when we talk about sisterhood, Patricia, what does it look like to you? If you were able to paint a picture as to what this collaboration might look like, help us take a peek at your perspective.
That there has to be a recognition of the value that both of us bring, you know what I'm saying, or a respect for the differences, because, you know, we're going to get into these professional relationships or even personal relationships that, you know, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but there has to be a respect there. There has to be a respect. You have to encourage. I think sisterhood is this encouragement that, you know, sometimes we need it. I remember when I was writing my dissertation and there were these two women that I could call when I just felt stuck, or I just felt, you know, they've been through where I've been. And so I just needed to be able to talk to them and just,
which is nice to have.
It's just nice to have. And so that helps, with that. Also, I feel like sisterhood is empowering each other, and wanting to do. And one of the ways that one of my recent colleagues did that was, I've been struggling with writing. So I know as a PhD in the academic field, I need to write, and writing has been, this is an example of how this could, be an issue in the workplace. If you're not in a position, and I don't even know what the word is, but in a growing self-aware position of who you are, but of writing. So I have one of my friends, she's a prolific writer, and she just, that's all she does. She likes books more than people. And so I guess that's why it works for her. But she sees me and she's like, God, if I had, your qualities or your traits, I would just be phenomenal. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, if I had some of your traits, and then I would be.
Yeah.
When, I invited her to come speak to my school with a book that she wrote. And one of the things that she did was she goes, let's co-author a book together. Let's come together. And because of this mentorship now, she's going to push me in an area that I've been wanting to be able to grow in, there's been some fear there. And so now she's taken this position of a collaboration that now I'm not doing it by myself. I'm going to get some experience. And so that is an example of sisterhood, that, I have this experience. Let me, let's do this in order for me to help you with that.
Wonderful example. Wonderful example. And for those of you who are listening and watching, Dr. D'Souza is not talking about writing a paper. She's talking about publishing. So it's a whole different animal. When you're trying to publish, there's lots of research that goes into it. And you do have to you do have to stay focused. It's like birthing a baby. That's the way it feels.
I've never been pregnant, so I don't know. But
you're gonna get a feel for it.
People talk about it, and my dissertation process was slow. And it was similar to what people talked about. I can't even talk, say that I've experienced it, but you're right.
Yes, it's just long and slow, but then once it's finally ready, that, oh my goodness, it's like a birthday celebration for sure.
Right, that's right.
Well, before we take a break, I want to ask you very quickly about your global knowledge. Where have you traveled, and where would you like to travel?
Now this is some fun stuff right here. This is the fun questions, right? I recently just got back from Costa Rica. I took, my goal was to be able to take more than 2 students that I had, but it worked out where these students went with me and we joined another group. So it was a great experience. So I have been, let's think. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Guatemala. I've been to Panama. I've been to Argentina. I've been to Colombia. I've been to Brazil. I've been to Portugal. I've been to Spain. I've been to France. I've been to Tanzania. Where else have I been? Now, where I would like to go, I realize some of the areas that I've been is somewhat of a safe zone, meaning like I can speak Spanish and Portuguese. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of Spanish-speaking countries I can go to. It's the Asian countries that I want to go to, but it's truly going to put me in a position where some of these people that have never traveled before, I feel like that's what's going to happen to me. And I think that's going to be good for me professionally okay, I don't know the language. I don't know the food. I don't know anything, and I think that's what that represents to me, the Asian culture. So Thailand, China, India. And so those places are still on my list. So there's still places that I want to go, but I have to admit that I'm a little nervous about it because I can say I'm a traveler and I've been to these places, but I've been to places where I can pretty much navigate, I can get on my own, I can do stuff. And so this will be a true test for me really to, are you really about what you say you're about? Because I've been a little nervous about going to these places because I don't know much about them. But I think that that's what I need, which is great that I still have opportunities to feel how maybe my students can feel, or people that, never traveled before. And I say students, but there's faculty and staff where I work that have never left. And it's a process, getting your passport. And so I've been to, I think I've named all those places. There's more places in Africa that I want to go to. So right now I want to be able to touch all the continents. So I haven't been to Australia. And I would love to go there. And of course, there's more places in Europe. So, I figured I still got the rest of my life to try to, find these places.
To catch up with. Exactly. And you just gave us a great example of breaking out of your comfort zone when it comes to traveling. So for those of you who are listening and watching and you're thinking, oh, well, I don't know the language or the culture, that's part of the fun. That's part of the fun. Well, I'm Felesha Love with Dr. D'Souza. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, we are back. I'm Felesha Love with Dr. Patricia D'Souza, and she is the assistant professor in Spanish and Portuguese at Claflin University, and also the director of international education. Dr. D'Souza, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. I'm enjoying our conversation.
Yes. Before we went on the break, we talked a lot about diversity, and we talked a lot about, sisterhood, and how professional women are struggling with that idea in our professional arenas, and the fact that it would take us all to sit back and, analyze our values and open up so that there can be a stronger collaboration between women across industries. I want to take a moment to ask you, how can colleges and businesses expand their approach to diversity?
First, you have to begin the conversation, because, if some people might not know what it looks like. So you begin the conversation to say, what does that look like? What does diversity mean? And so I think first you have to be on that same page, you know what I'm saying, of what diversity is. And I wanted to read something, a definition that I heard about cultural diversity. And I think that it kind of helps maybe the action points of kind of how to embrace or to be more diverse. And one of them is recognition of the abundant diversity of cultures. And so if you don't recognize the different value, the abundance that these people are bringing to your organization, then number one, it might not be an environment for them. So they're going to either voice that or leave. And so if you want to keep and retain those, you have to recognize that. We have to respect their differences. And so unfortunately, we might be in an environment that, they've made a decision about maybe sexual preference that might not be along with the preference of maybe an institution, but you still have to respect that difference. It might not be what you decide to do, but you have to respect that. One of them is acknowledging the validity of different cultures, expressions, and contributions. Valuing what other cultures offer, encouraging the contribution of diverse groups, empowering people to strengthen themselves and others to achieve their maximum potential by being critical of their own biases, and then celebrating rather than just tolerating the differences in order to bring about unity through diversity. And so I think all those things actually are part of that culture. When you start recognizing, when you start celebrating, when you start empowering people, then you feel more comfortable in that environment. You're going to thrive in that environment.
Mm-hmm. So you just said something that kind of touched my heart.
Okay.
What is the difference between acceptance and tolerance?
When it comes to tolerating, I just feel like there is not a true, and we've talked about it before when we talked about women in professional place. There's a tension there. There's a wall there. Yeah. And I feel like that's what you feel if you're tolerating. Mm-hmm. You don't feel like you can move in the culture and the organization as yourself. Tolerant is just putting up with it, meaning, the lip service, and you can feel it. It's not that lifelessness, I guess, when it
Yeah.
comes to going through a program or something. So let's say there is a global, it's called International Student, a global night. And that's where we kind of celebrate all our international students and all our international faculty. We only had those people there. We only had a handful of people that were from other, let's say domestic, for a better word, it was a celebration for them. And that's not true acceptance,
That is exactly what I have seen in businesses and college campuses that I've worked on. It's exactly what I've seen. And that's why I wanted you to spell this out.
Spell it
Because
out.
there's a difference between having a program and really mindfully integrating values of acceptance, of understanding, even if you don't accept,
Right.
at least fully understand so that you aren't part of the problem.
That's right. That's right.
And it leads to racism in so many different ways. And so this is why Patricia and I are having this conversation, because racism is rampant in our culture, in every culture, and every culture struggles with it as well. Is that true?
Correct.
I know it's definitely true in the Black community with shades of brownness. Light brown versus dark brown is an issue.
It's interesting that you said that, because I had a conversation with one of my girlfriends, and that's another thing I feel like that kind of helps me. And when it comes to sisterhood, that you can have these honest conversations with some of your immediate circle. I feel like the countries that have the impact of the African diaspora because of slavery, I feel like have the most issues, with racism in the professional place or, in the social setting. When you hear about countries like Denmark and Finland, when they have the best education system or the best places to learn, I remember bringing it up to, one of my friends. I was like, why is that? And I was like, the only major thing that I could see, and that's without not doing real research, is they weren't affected by the African diaspora. You didn't have colonizers actually coming to bring a set of people to oppress and to work to see as property. And so if you don't have that in your culture, then now you kind of see everybody as equal, and that, yes, everybody needs healthcare because we don't see everybody different. Yes, everybody needs education because we don't see anybody as different. So you start looking at those countries, it's like, why are those countries flourishing a little bit more? And one of the main things that I saw was that, and because working at HBCU, and then of course Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery, and they have lots of issues with racism that's so different than what's going on with the United States, but it's still the same issues. It's still fundamental issues of not accepting somebody or discriminating against somebody just because of a color.
Would you mind giving us a little insight on your perspective of racism in Brazil versus what you see here in America?
Well, and I have to say that my last couple of trips to Brazil really kind of opened up a little bit. That's another thing what international travel will do, at least for me, is what it did for me, is I really started questioning who I was, what I believed in, and why did I believe in those things. And one of the things that I grew up with is that there was a struggle with color. And I saw it with my parents when it came to maybe dating. So if I wanted to date somebody that was outside of my race, that's when it was presented to me. I didn't realize it was an issue until I started dating. And so with that being said, I never understood, because I was just like, well, we're different than Americans here too, but okay, maybe our skin is not as dark or anything like that. So when I started going back to Brazil with students, and I was going back with HBCUs, there was this emphasis of trying to understand the African influence, the descent that are in some of these places. And what I realized that, the slavery in Brazil, you had the most slaves come to Brazil. And then secondly, it was just more horrific what was happening to them. And so this has translated itself into society today. The universities are all free in Brazil. But if you notice in universities, less than 2% identify themselves as Afro-Brazilians. If you look at the government, as you can see, it's predominantly white men that are there. And so they all have impact of what happens in society. And so what may be a little bit different than United States is it's not uncommon in the newspapers to see an ad for a secretary or admin assistant with good hair.
Wow.
And so with that being said, we don't have that in United States. That's illegal, right? To have it in the United States. In a newspaper, there was a transfer of power with the Benedita da Silva. She is a governor. She's a Black woman governor. And in the newspaper, the incoming governor said, they had to scrub and clean that place completely down because there was a Black woman that was in there before. And that was printed in the newspapers. Wow. So you have certain things like that maybe United States might be a little bit more advanced in the sense of, I don't want to say advanced, but maybe protect. You know what I'm saying? You can't just,
come out and say what you really mean.
Right.
What are you really thinking?
What you really thinking? So Brazil, that's what it is. They have the same issues that we have when it comes to militarized police. Shoot first, ask questions later. And who's getting shot more are the Afro-Brazilians, or Brazilians that are of color, or that identify themselves of color. And that's another thing. They identify themselves as Brazilians, not as a white Brazilian or a Black Brazilian. Whereas here in the United States, we had this box. Are you white? Are you Black? Are you other? Well, in Brazil, one way of trying to promote this myth of racial democracy was we're all Brazilians. We see each other the same, and that's not necessarily the case. So now they're trying to pull and say, what do you identify yourself with? And so with affirmative action that they're trying to do in the universities now, what's interesting, it's so hard to get into the universities that you have some people that are finding a Black grandmother so they can claim. So it's interesting how this is coming about when it comes to maybe universities. But that was just really small little examples of.
That's fascinating though.
It's very different. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what happens when you're not a global traveler. You don't know that these things are happening. We're depending on CNN and, local news to give us what you just said, and we don't hear it. So how would we know, right? Before I let you go, give us a few tips on international travel for those people who are listening and watching and would love to travel. What are your tips?
Okay, so the first thing is you have to have an open mind. You have to be open, you have to be flexible, because what happens is you're going to go into this mind frame of your perspective. Well, this is how it is back home. This is how I do it in the United States. And so that's really tough. Instantly, people will notice it because maybe by the food or by communications, not having access to their phones like they did before.
That's a big deal.
Open mind. Also, you need to plan ahead. And so you might need a passport, depending on what country you're trying to go to. You might need a visa. Visa is permission to let you in the country. And so with visas, depending with some countries, you have to go through a process to be in the country. Also, too, we're traveling a different season or a different administration, and realize that people who are going to travel now, especially for the first time, they're going to be seen as American. They're not going to be seen as Black Americans, white Americans, a woman. They're going to be seen as an American. And sometimes all the issues that happen with the government is put on a tourist or a traveler. When I was traveling with some students during the Bush administration, we had a lot of people just go back home we hate Bush. And so even if you didn't vote for Bush, they just put you in that category. Because we are at a different time now, you have to be really precautious, when it comes to where you go, and just realize that we're Americans and they're going to see us a little bit different there. And that's where open their mind comes, and doing some research. There's, if you've never been out of the country, maybe going to a country like Costa Rica, which is close. They don't, none of their money has been used for military. All their money has been invested in the ecotourism in the country. And so going to maybe a country that is super friendly, not a history of any kind of violence, accepting of people. Sometimes maybe that could be a good first trip to go to. Costa Rica is a great first trip for people to go. I loved going to Portugal. Things were not as expensive. You get the feel of a European country, but at the same time, it's safe. So you don't have maybe those issues maybe you have like in England and France. Now we have a new as a prime minister of France, and he did this open invitation. Americans, he's invited to come to the country to do research, to visit. And so with that openness coming from the top, I think there's going to be more of an effort to protect those people that come into the country to kind of see. So, with the terrorists, you can't really, that's one thing that I worry in my position when I'm talking to parents, of these terrorist attacks that have been taking place. Europe is a country that's high on the list that people want to go and visit. And, that could be a barrier, that could be a concern because, of those kind of attacks. We can have those attacks here, we can, get in the car and you might be more in a position to get hurt or in a car accident. And so I think that when it comes to the fears, you have to realize, is this coming from a place of fear or a place of love? If you're really trying to open up yourself to opportunities to grow as a person, that means you truly love yourself in a place that you want that experience. If you stay in that space of fear, you're always going to find some reason not to do something. And so that's one of my ways of trying to convince or to try to talk to people when it comes to traveling.
Wow. Well, you've given us some wonderful tips. I so appreciate it. I know that you are in your office and have tons of work to do. Oh, yes. But I so appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and enlighten us about diversity and sisterhood and global travel. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you reached out to me. So I'm looking forward to us talking again. And
absolutely.
More than willing and would love to have this conversation again, or another conversation. Maybe we'll have to have it internationally, right?
And I'm thinking that as you're speaking, I'm thinking, we should really represent diversity and to really have those conversations that everybody else is afraid to have.
That's right.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully we've ignited a fire under those of you who are listening and watching to not only be a part of a diverse program, but be a part of the solution. Actually open your heart and embrace the idea and take the time to get to know someone you don't understand. I think it's a wonderful thing. We'll have a much smoother ride here on earth if we all took the time to just get to understand one another. It's easy. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right. Much love to you.